This is the 2022 Mega Motor Test. I've got 6 different e-bikes, 6 completely different motors. And in this video, I'm going to go through the differences between them. The power, we'll have a drag race, we'll listen to the motors on a hill climb and find out which one's the noisiest, which is the quietest. And some of them make a noise when you're descending. So we'll listen out for the rattly ones as well.
Also, we'll check out the different ways that the brands integrate the electronics and displays. And I've got a lot to share on motor reliability, including some examples of some damaged motors from the team at the eBike Motor Centre.
So in this video, you're going to learn everything you need to know about the latest 2022 electric mountain bike motors.
Shimano EP8, released in late 2020, 85 Nm of torque, and a popular motor used by brands like Focus, Santa Cruz, Merida, YT and Yeti. Next, the new Bosch Smart, 85 Nm of torque, released in late 2021, and brands such as Trek, White, Scott, Focus, Highbike and Cannondale. Next, we have the Brose Mag S. Released in late 2018, this has got 90 Nm of torque and is used in the really popular specialised Levo, Kenevo, Rottwild and BH bikes. Next, we've got Yamaha's latest generation, the PWX3. 85 Nm of torque, released in late 2021 and used by Giant, Highbike and Raymond. Next up, we've got the first of the lightweight motors, the Mahle, 1.95 kilos and 35 Nm of torque, and is used in the specialised bikes, the Levo SL, Kenevo SL and Creo SL. And finally, the Shimano EP8 RS, 60 Nm of torque, released in late 2020, and this one's exclusive to Orbea for the lightweight Orbea Rise.
This is my favourite part of this whole video, it's the drag test. Now, I'm going to do a short climb. It's nothing massive. It's typical of what you might encounter on pretty much every ride that you do. It's like 25 seconds, 30 seconds, not mega, but steep enough. We'll put the finish line just there. And I'm going to do the 6 bikes and we'll time it. It's not super scientific, it's just a bit of fun. So don't read too much into it, but I'm curious to find out which does this climb the fastest. All the bikes are fully charged, fresh batteries. I've put them in the highest possible mode that they will go in on the app. And I'm going to ride the Kenevo SL first. I think it might be the slowest, so I'm going to give it the best chance. I'm fresh myself. So we'll start the drag race with the super light Kenevo SL. Woo! What's the time? 27.62. 27.62. It's been a while since I've ridden a super light. You can tell straight away. They require a lot more rider input, way more rider power. Kind of feels like it's all your own steam, but you can hear the whir of the motor working in the background. So 27.62 on the Kenevo SL. Let's try the next lightweight, the Orbea Rise. Stop. Woo. Straight away, as soon as you go, you can feel it's got more power, way more low down grunt. When it gets to the top, it doesn't feel massively different, but low down just pulls way more than the Kenevo SL. So the Kenevo SL was 27.62. 25.36. 25.36. So yeah, good 2 and a bit seconds faster than the Kenevo SL. Like I said, this is not massively scientific. It's just going on my feeling of the short little blast here, but I felt it was faster and the clock says it was faster as well. I think we'll do the giant rain next with the Yamaha PWX3 motor. Ooh, okay, night and day difference. The low down grunt is incredible on this. Compared to the lightweights, it pulls from real low down, like a tractor. The 85 Newton meters of torque just get you off the line so quick, and it just carries on going and going and going. What was the time, John? 22:59. 22:59, so considerably quicker, and I can feel it's way more powerful. Like, it just shuttles you along. Okay, next we will do the Shimano EP8 full fat on the Focus Jam squared. Whew. All right, so interesting. It's fast, but the grunt on here is low down, and it definitely fizzles out more towards the top. It's like it loses the torque when it gets high up. It just seems to lose a bit of that top end, like it's kind of running out of steam. What was the time, John?
24:03.
24:03, so yeah, 2 seconds, a little bit less, but 2 seconds slower than the PWX3 on the Yamaha, and you know, not massively off. It's almost in between the Yamaha and the Orbea Rise, the Superlight. So yeah, definitely the time corresponds to how it feels to ride. Starts off nice and chunky, gobs of torque, loads of power, fizzles out at the top end as it gets really steep. Pretty much my experience before of riding the EP8. I'll tell you what, that feels fast. So it's still got the low down grunt, and it just carries on giving power. Just as fast as you can pedal, the power continues. Very, very natural feeling. It's almost like an extension of your own body power. Felt quicker than the EP8. I'm interested to see if it was quicker than the fastest so far, which was the Giant and the Yamaha PWX. What was the time, John?
22:12.
22:12. So that is fractionally quicker than the Giant. The Giant was just a little bit slower than that. That's rated 85 Newton meters. This is rated 90 Newton meters of torque. Torque doesn't always tell the whole story though. It's how it delivers the power. I'm impressed with that. It's just in the lead so far. Next we're going to try the Bosch. It is the last bike I'm riding. Woo. Constant power right the way through. Can't say it felt massively more powerful than the Levo with the Brose. What was the time, John?
21:34.
21:34. I'm going to crown the Bosch Gen 4 with a smart system, big battery, the winner of the super unaccurate, unscientific drag race up my local hill and my local trail. By the way, make sure you're subscribed to my channel because I bring out e-bike stuff every week. So if you're looking at an e-bike or you're thinking about buying one, make sure you're subscribed and you'll be the first to see all the new content that comes out on my channel.
So let's take a look at these motors in a little bit more detail.
So this is the freshest system out on the market at the moment, the Bosch Smart. This has been updated for 2022. They've got bigger batteries, so they're now up to 750 watt-hour batteries, and there's more connectivity with their smart system, so you can connect your phone to it, it can send health details to things like Apple Health, and they're plugging it as a system that can be future-proofed with all the updates that they're planning to bring out. So I'm hoping they bring out things like maps and different cool features that allow you to use the little display as a replacement to something like a Garmin. Next up, we've got the Shimano EP8. This is an open system. Compared to the Bosch, which Bosch only allow you to use their own batteries, with Shimano you can actually use third-party batteries. So this bike here has a 720 watt internal and removable battery. This is the Orbea Rise. It weighs about 17.5, 18 kilos. It uses the same motor, the EP8, but it's an RS version. Effectively, it's a little bit detuned compared to the full-powered one, and it uses a much smaller battery. So you've got not quite the same amount of power, but you've got a much, much lighter bike. To give you a comparison, the Focus bike weighs about 25 kilos, and this is about 7 kilos lighter. It's a pretty considerable difference. but you've got a much smaller 360 watt hour battery. So it's about half the size of the battery you get in the full power ones. This is the Generation 3 Turbo Levo, and it's got the Brose Mag S motor in, and Specialized call it the 2.2. Now this one comes with a 700 watt hour internal battery. A couple of years ago that was really leading the pack, but actually amongst these bikes it's on the lower side now when you've got a 720 on the Focus and a 750 on the Bosch. Still, it's a pretty decent capacity and you can get some mega rides out of it. Next up, we've got this giant rein that has the new Yamaha PWX3 motor. The headline for this really is it's much smaller, lighter than the previous version, and actually it's got way more ground clearance than it had before. Now you can get up to a 750 watt battery with this motor system, so a massive capacity for all day riding. And here we've got the Kenevo SL. This has got the super light motor by a company called Mahle, but Specialized call it the SL motor. 35 Newton meters of torque, so considerably less than the rest of the bikes here. But what that gives you is a very natural feeling bike to pedal. It's almost like riding a regular mountain bike, but just a little bit of extra boost to help you up the climbs. And like the Orbea Rise, you can't remove the battery, so you have to charge it inside the bike all the time. Next up, we've got the noise test. Now, all e-bikes are noisy. Going up, the motors make a noise, and going down, they make a noise as well. I've got this professional Rode microphone just here, and what I'll do is I'll strap it onto the bike so you can hear what the motor sounds like when it's under full power and what it sounds like coasting and the kind of rattle noises that all the motors make. So that's really interesting to test, and by the way, that will be an extreme worst case scenario what you're actually hearing, because the way the microphone was positioned, it was on the underside of the frame, and actually your ears are a lot higher. The microphone also picks up those horrible kind of mid frequencies, so that is an absolute worst case example of how the motors sound. In reality, you do kind of zone out. It doesn't sound anywhere near as bad. Saying that, there are distinct differences between all of the bikes. So some are really quiet going down, but noisy going up, and vice versa. So in terms of the quietest on the descents, I would say the Specializeds are super quiet. So the Kenevo SL, this going down, you can barely hear the motor at all. I couldn't hear anything. That was lovely and quiet. And the Levo, full fat Levo, again, going down, like hardly any noise at all. In fact, I could just hear the suspension compressing. You can hear that spring on there compressing more than the motor, and then the tyre noise. Next up, I would say, is the Giant. This is maybe the same kind of level as the Levo, maybe a tiny little bit noisier. Could hear a couple of little clunks, more like thuds rather than kind of rattles, but I can hear that just a bit. The Bosch is sometimes quiet, but as it gets rougher, the rougher it gets with the Bosch, the louder it gets. It's got this distinct motor clunk, and it sounds a little bit like loose cables or metal on metal. So yeah, this is not the quietest descender, but by far the noisiest to me was the Shimano EP8. I think the Shimano EP8 is distinctly louder than all of the other bikes. You can just hear this metal, some metallic clunk noise, and it's kind of displeasing. Having said that, I have ridden EP8 bikes for a while, and you do filter out the noises, but when you compare them back to back, you can hear a distinct rattle. Hopefully the microphone picked it up, and it was exactly the same rattle on the Orbea Rise with the EP8 motor. It's the same hardware inside. It's just got the RS tune on this. Maybe this one sounded louder. You hear that? It's coming from, oh yeah. I think where the bike is so lightweight, it amplifies it. Also, I should say that frame material affects the acoustics and the way that that noise is heard. So yeah, they're all noisy. Some are noisier than others, but going up, it's a little bit of a different story. Although this bike, the Kenevo SL, was the quietest, I would say, going down. Going up, it's definitely got a high-pitched whine. Sounds like a noisy radio-controlled car. Kind of high-pitched noise, and it's annoying because the bike is so stealthy, so silent, and you know, looks like a regular mountain bike, but as soon as you start powering up the climbs, you can hear it, that RC car kind of come to life. Next up, strangely, I've never really noticed this before, but I would say the Levo, full fat Levo, is more like it's a lower pitch noise. A bit like a washing machine or a power steering motor on a car. You know, when you give it that and it sounds under strain, it sounds like it's working hard, but it's a lower pitch noise, and I would say that it's more bearable than the higher pitch whine that you have in the Kenevo SL. Next up, the Bosch, definitely, again, sounds like a bit more of a sewing machine sound or RC car. It's just a constant Definitely this one is not silent going up or down. It's definitely an e-bike you can hear. It's not that offensive, but it is still noisy. So next up, the Giant, the Yamaha PWX3 and the Giant. It's funny, this one, because it almost sounds like it's spooling up, and then when the power is reduced, you can hear it go, it's like it kind of powers up, and then, so you can hear it. It's a different tone to this. Sounds like it's kind of getting revs, a bit like an electric moto, powering up. It's different to the others, still fairly quiet, but you can hear it. But to me, the quietest going up, which is the opposite of going down, I think, is the Shimano EP8. Still hear it, not super loud, but to my ears they sounded quite natural. There was definitely still some audible noise, but the quietest of all the motors. So strangely, the quietest ones going down are the noisiest going up, and the quietest going up and the noisiest going down. Hopefully the manufacturers can all work on these noises and give us even more stealthy, silent sounding bikes in the future. Next up, I want to talk about the integration. So to me, integration means how well is all the electrical stuff integrated into the bike. Some have got bulky displays, but this specialized turbo Levo is a fine example. It's a technical masterpiece, I said when I did the video on this, and I still believe it. It's got a lovely little screen, super seamlessly integrated into the top tube. All the controllers are seamless. They're really small, really discreet, but very tactile and work extremely well. The battery is integrated really nicely into the down tube, and you remove the battery from the bottom of the bike. The only thing that I think on the bike is it's looking quite big and bulbous down here. And it's actually due to the way that the motor is rotated upwards and the battery is slung really low. And what that does is it means that the center of gravity on this particular bike is as low as it possibly can be. You've got all the weight kind of based down here. So whilst aesthetically looks a bit big and chunky, actually it really does enhance the performance of the bike. But I love the integration on the Specialized bikes. I think they're really leading the way on integration, and to me it's kind of like the benchmark. They look good, they perform well, they're easy to use, and yeah, they're just really well designed and well thought out. Next up, we got the Specialized Kenevo, and actually the integration is almost identical to the full fat e-bike. Super clean, really well thought out. But actually one of the things with this is you can barely tell it's an e-bike because the battery is kind of long and thin. It looks very discreet. Can you even tell it's an e-bike? There's a couple of things that maybe give it away. The little charger port just down here. But yeah, when you're riding this, it feels so light. People look at it, no one knows it's an e-bike. And actually the super lights are really easy to live with. Things like putting it in the back of a car, on a roof rack, in a van, or even just lifting it over gates, stiles. They're so lightweight, easy to lift above your shoulders, easy to live with, and perhaps, along with the Orbea Rise, the most discreet looking electric mountain bike out on the market at the moment. So the new Giants have got some beautifully designed components to make the integration look super slick. Very, very minimalist, so there's no display on here. So it's just a small discreet LED unit on the top tube. Batteries integrated underneath the down tube, really easy to remove. There's just a screw here, one here, and it just kind of falls out under there. This bike has got quite a fat looking down tube, so definitely looks like an e-bike compared to the Kenevo SL. You look at this and you're like, damn, that's pretty chunky, that's an e-bike, but they've done a really good job in trying to make it super discreet. I really like the controller on this bike. It's very well integrated into the grip. You can use any grips, but the way they've contoured the OEM ones, the stock ones, makes it seamless and it blends in to the mode control buttons on the handlebars. So great job there from Giant. Next up, we've got the Shimano EP8 on this brand new Focus Jam Squared. I really like the integration of the Shimano system. Super neat little mode controller, little screen as well. It's quite discreet, and the motor unit actually is quite small itself and fairly lightweight. You can see similarly to the Levo, on this Focus Jam, they've slung the battery super low. So it does look quite bulky and bulbous down here, but the motor unit itself is fairly small. Just looks a bit chunkier because they've added the battery and all the connectors and that kind of stuff down here. You can remove the battery on this bike. It slides out straight down through the bottom of the down tube. So you need to put the bike in a stand or turn the bike upside down to remove it, just like the full power turbo Levo. Next up, we've got the new Bosch Smart System. 750 watt-hour battery, neatly integrated into the down tube, super easy to remove on this Trek rail. There's a key, goes in there, ejects the battery, and on this bike it comes out of the side. The motor system itself is pretty small compared to what we saw on the Focus Jam and the Levo. Don't you think it looks more compact and a bit less bulbous down there? I think it looks a bit cleaner. So although the battery isn't slung super low, you've got a bit more clearance down here, and aesthetically I think this looks a bit better. Where I don't think it looks better, however, is the massive chunky remote control that you get with the new Bosch system, and totally different in contrast to some of the really neat offerings. You've got this chunky display sticking out, so it's not really well integrated in my opinion compared to some of the offerings from some of the other motor systems. The other thing with Bosch is they don't allow any third-party devices to connect to their system. So you can't use any third-party controllers, screens or batteries. I think that sucks a little bit. It'd be good to see some other companies be able to develop parts for it. Like that little Giant controller that they made for the handlebars. This is much, much bigger and bulkier. And because all the brands have to use the Bosch supplied equipment, they're stuck with it. And I just think it looks a bit rubbish compared to some of the other offerings that are out there on the market. So whilst the motor is nice and small, nice and tightly integrated, and so are the batteries, the screen and the controllers just look a bit out of place. We've got another super sweet lightweight. This is the Orbea Rise with the Shimano EP8. It is beautifully integrated. Again, we've got a very long, thin battery, so the down tube, and in fact the entire bike, the proportions work beautifully. Little small Shimano controller, and actually on this bike there's no display at all. So it barely even looks like an e-bike. Got the Shimano EP8 RS motor down here, nice and compact, decent amount of ground clearance, and like I said, no display. It looks super discreet, super minimalist. It's actually got this little kind of bulky thing. It's the only thing that I don't like about it. It's the battery display unit and the mode unit. It's kind of like a bit clunky. It ruins the neat aesthetic of the bike, I think. But again, beautifully crafted, super light electric mountain bike. You can barely tell it's an electric bike. And again, nice and lightweight, so easy to lift up above your head, get on your roof, get in your van, in the back of your car, in your garage, all of that stuff, over gates. What a beautifully designed electric mountain bike from Orbea.
Next up, information on reliability of the e-bike motors. I got this info from the eBike Motor Centre. They repair around 100 e-bike motors per month. Here's what they said about the Bosch motor. The Bosch Gen 4 motor has generally been a very popular and reliable unit, meaning there are a lot out there in the market and we currently don't see that many for repair. Electronically, the latest Bosch Gen 4 motors are becoming quite technically clever with the new smart system, and I think this will be the way most manufacturers will go. Mechanically, the nemesis of all e-bike motors, water. It's been half tackled by Bosch with some rudimentary seals fitted to the outer facing bearings. These seals are helping, and if looked after can definitely extend the motor's life. If water makes its way into this new motor, it does do a lot of damage or death. The Bosch Gen 4 motor is not an easy one to repair, and big damage is definitely possible if you have not done one before. People have remarked on the rattle of this motor that can be heard when traversing rough or choppy terrain. This is caused by a small amount of movement or backlash in the internal drive gears and is not currently fixable. The Brose 2.2. Brose made several advances with their 2.1 motor, which was eventually rebadged as the 2.2. There were no real big technical advances with this new motor, but Brose is a company that just keep tweaking things, so the 2.2 will evolve eventually into the 2.3. Electronically, Brose motors have always been a bit basic, but very reliable when talking about the electronic control unit. They do suffer water ingress into the cables and plugs, but this is continually improving, especially in the case of Specialized, and the 2.2 motor is virtually free of this issue. Mechanically, the 2.2 motor is just as susceptible to water ingress as its predecessors, and it can be devastating to the motor. Our upgrade has proven that you can make these motors last, and you can keep water out without adding friction. I am sure Brose will get around to this one day. Yamaha PWX3. As the PWX3 is not even out of warranty yet, we haven't seen any through the workshop. However, we are hoping that it's an improvement on the old motors. Electronically, all Yamahas have been a little bit weak on their internal printed circuit boards, and this was never helped by fitting the circuit board at the bottom of the motor. If any water enters the motor, the first thing to go is the circuit board. Mechanically, the PWX and sync drive motor was a bit of a backward step for Yamaha, although it was billed as the all-new dedicated EMTB motor. As far as internal parts are concerned, it was a poor second to its predecessors for off-road use. Smaller bearings without seals mean faster failure. You need to watch out for bearing failure, water ingress and sheared drive gear. It's actually a relatively easy motor to work on though. The Shimano EP8 and the Shimano EP8 RS. We don't currently work on Shimano due to the issues with the software on the earlier motors and the lack of support we have from Shimano. However, although the early Shimano E7000 and E8000 motors were plagued with software and sensor failures that would instantly turn the motor into a house brick, it would appear that they may have started to get over these issues. We can usually monitor quite accurately by the amount of phone calls we get for help on a particular motor, how reliable the motor is and what issues they're having, and it seems so far that EP8 are proving to be relatively reliable. They do have a reputation for a little noise and rattle over rough ground, but most people seem to be okay to live with this. The Mahle 1.1 SL. The Mahle is a fascinating motor, compact, light and so far relatively reliable. It is still early days for this motor, but first impressions are good. As for repairs, it is a motor with a lot of internal components, so photos or careful notes might be required if working on this one. We're currently sourcing all the components required for supporting the Mahle when the warranty time is up.
By the way, if you did like this video, let me know with a thumbs up because it really helps me understand what you guys like. And pop your comments down below. I love reading them. I'll try and respond to as many as I can. And I'll catch you all soon. Take care.